Alrighty, I was gonna make a video of a demo that I had just made, but then I felt like I wanted to like ramble a lot more than it would have been appropriate for the demo video, because because that was crazy, right? Like what happened uh was that I was working on this demo and working on the video for the demo, and like I at the same time, I couldn't focus on it because because ChatGPT couldn't access my website. And, with all the things I was reading yesterday and posting yesterday and saying yesterday, it's like one of the core thing of SEO in the new era, you need the LLMs to know about your business. Um, and so knowing that ChatGPT couldn't access my website was just eating at me. And I tried like a million different things. Finally, I had to contact the hosting company, and they did something, and that did ultimately fix it. But it was a two-part fix. They needed to do something, and then I needed to change the HT access files. But then, so I fixed that finally. I was like, okay, nice, got that done. Let's go back to work making these demos. And now the demos don't work. None of the demos worked. And what I realized was that one of the things we did to the HT access files is that we made it so that the headers have to be HTML. They can't be server send events, and that broke the streaming. So then I had to go through and edit and it's when I say it this way, it doesn't actually seem like that much of like a crazy roller coaster ride that it felt like at the time when it was like, which every time you like have a problem and you're trying to fix it, it's like that because it's like you don't know, is this going to be something that takes 30 seconds to fix? I've had things that were like, there's a problem, and I'm like, okay, like this, I don't. It's probably not a big deal. I'll go fix it. I'll ask ChatGPT what's going on, and then I'll go fix it. And 3 months later, like I'm still struggling with that problem, and I haven't done anything else in the meanwhile. Like barely slept, barely ate, barely talked to human beings, uh, and still couldn't figure out how to fix it, and still didn't have any idea how much longer it would take me to fix it. So when something like this happens, where where something happens where it's like, oh, by the way, something else that's really annoying is that on my live stream yesterday, the it wasn't picking up anything that ChatGPT was saying. And I was intentionally using like the voice version instead of the text version so that when you listen to the video, it would all make sense. And instead, it's not only do you not hear the voice of ChatGPT, but you don't even have the option of reading the text. Anyways, so yeah, whenever you're fixing like a something like that, a major bug, a major problem, not a bug, but like it's just straight up not working. It's an emotional roller coaster ride because even when it only takes a little while to fix, um, you don't know that until it's fixed. You don't know how much longer it's going to take you to figure it out unless you've solved that problem before. And in this case, I tried, 15, 16 different things, and nothing was making any progress. And I wasn't sure that talking to the hosting company would solve anything. And so finally I got it solved, and I breathed a big sigh of relief, and I went and got some food, and I went for a walk, and I came back and I realized all of my chatbots are broken. And again, I didn't know if it was going to be a big problem or not, but it wasn't a big problem at all, honestly. So um, I just needed to rant about that, if you can call that a rant, for a minute or two before I really got into this demo. And I'll just go ahead and do show the demo on here. I don't know, maybe that is a better way to do it, is just to like make like can I do that though? Well, I mean, like, I can, like, mass produce, like, 15 demos and then just do a live stream and where I, like, go demonstrate all of them, and then just edit the video, just chop it into 15 different shorter videos. But the problem is, I wanna put them up on a different channel, so I'm not sure if that's, gonna work or not. Anyways, let's just get started with the company info bot. I'm pretty sure this is the streaming reg bot. Yep, that was definitely streaming. Tell me about this company. That's a good, starting what the way it started the conversation. I like it. Before I was having issues with one of the issues that I have is it's like I see that you've uploaded some files. That's like a problem that's been going on for years now. Um, cool. That seems like a great answer. Customer feedback assistant. This is what ChatGPT decided to name the Google review bot. Let's get started. They improved it. They improved my traffic. Yes, they did. They were very responsive. I'm getting sick of these same questions, but they're good questions for SEO agencies. So until an SEO agency tells me that they're sick of them, I'll probably keep using the same ones. Unless I come up with better ones. Which at this point, my knowledge of SEO is like 10 times more than it was 2 weeks ago or like a month ago, whenever it was that I first started um, focusing on SEO agencies. So, anyway, so these guys have a office in Taiwan. I'm not sure that they're actually a Taiwanese company because it seems like the guy is American and he also has an office in New York. So, could go either way. Okay, that was the review bot. Let's check the main menu. Can we get out of the review bot? That is when one thing that's been an issue is well, that worked perfectly. You know what I think I did honestly is that I think the HT-access rewrites were blocking the JSON. So it was doing all sorts of weird things when it tried to fetch the chat history. Um, so then I went in and like edited all the system prompts and stuff, thinking that that was the problem, but that it was nothing. That was not the problem at all. Okay, Content Explorer. This is what it called the feedbot. It turned the feedbot into Content Explorer. I don't know if I like these ideas at all, these names at all. And in fact, all of these names should have the word Taiwan Web Designs in them. That is for sure. But I really want to get on with making lots of demos. I don't think it's a good idea to get bogged down trying to make one demo perfect. I like the idea of moving on to the next demo and then each time making it so that instead of like making this demo amazing, it's like the next demo is slightly better, but in an automated way. So instead of going in and like being like add the word Taiwan in all of these, I make it so that for the next demo, it adds the company's name in automatically. Right. Okay. So this one, they have like some good articles on WordPress on this blog. Don't shut. Right. Right. Oh, this is still slower than I would like it to be. Um, okay. You know what? Every time when something comes up, and typically, um, I would just be like, all right, I'll fix that at some point in the future. But when I'm live streaming, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go look at it right now for the sake of the stream, for the sake of the audience. I have an audience. You know who you are. Of course, if anybody is out there thinking I don't have an audience, then I mean, that's very contradictory. The only way you could see me claiming to have an audience is if you are my audience, right? That's the only way it works. All right. Find the right directory is always the hardest part of coding is finding the correct directory. Now that we're in the correct directory, we're still not in the correct directory. We gotta find the Taiwanese Web Designs directory. Do we though? Yeah, we do. Not because it's not because we need to fix their feedbot specifically, but we do need, it's just an example of all the feedbots basically, of how all the feedbots work. So the question at hand here is, are we are we using the JSON API method of grabbing? Hmm, like not really. That is wild. So we're just grabbing the titles of all the posts. We're not grabbing the content of the posts. And then we're sending the titles in the system prompt to a structured output. And the structured output, um, let's see here. The structured output. Yuck, I can't look at JSON files. Okay, so my question is, why was that kind of slow? Basically, here's my point. What we're doing is we're grabbing all of the titles of the posts. Like, so when I chose Content Explorer, it grabbed all the titles of the posts, and then it didn't use them at all and just asked me, what topic are we interested in exploring? And then I said WordPress. And then it didn't use the already grabbed titles. It re-grabbed all of the titles. And then it displayed the ones that are related to WordPress. So that's stupid, obviously. Uh, so we could go faster either by, we could speed up this one by not grabbing the titles. Or if we do grab the titles, we could speed up this one by not re-grabbing the titles. But also, um, instead of grabbing the links to three different titles, we could spew these out one at a time. And I honestly don't even think we need, I don't really think, wait, how would we do this without structured outputs? Honestly, I don't think we need a structured output for this at all. Literally has the titles. We could even do a streaming response for this because it just needs the titles and the URLs. That's all it needs, and then it can just do this. But if we're doing like if we're grabbing the post, then we could spew them out one at a time. But if we have all the titles and all the URLs for all the titles, and we don't need to spew them out one at a time, I don't know. I really think that there's basically no reason. There's no reason to even use structured outputs on this, as far as I can tell. Well, So my question though is like, if I wanted to do a streaming response, what would I do differently? And in order to figure that out, I need to go into run bot rag and also rag.php. There's also a rag.json, but I'm pretty sure all that does is just check whether or not we need to get out of the rag bot. And if the answer is no, then that's where all the action happens in the second. Okay, so what rag.php does, it sets the headers for server sent events. It sets the flush to implicit so that there's a constant flush. Um, it removes certain things from chat history so that it won't break because it needs, I don't know, there's certain things that you can't, and then it adds the vector store. It sets streaming to true. Uh, it includes the file get completion. I am so confused right now. Post data. The thing that I'm confused about, okay, and it's using the responses URL, which is probably not necessary for streaming, to be honest. But I don't see why I wouldn't use it. Doesn't cost more money or anything. And as long as this is working. Anyways, the thing I'm confused about is it uses this function to enable the streaming. and I was completely lost as to where this function existed in the code. And finally, I found it. But the weird thing is that it was defined after the code ran. And I was like, how is that even possible? And then ChatGPT explained to me that when you make a function definition in PHP, it lives in the memory and it doesn't have to have already been executed yet. Like it can come before or after, but only if it's not in the same file as the thing that's using it, I think. So like if I say in the first line of this file, like use function X, but I haven't defined function X, that's going to be an error. But if I say in the first line of this file, include file X, and then the first line of file X is use function X, and then in the first file, I have the definition of function X. That will work. Isn't that insane? That is so weird to me. I think that's maybe I'm making that up. Maybe it would work anyways, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I think within one file. All right, fine. Just for the sake of the stream, let's go. In PHP, do you have to define a function before you can use it, or can you use a function which is defined later in the same file? Okay, yeah, so just whatever. You can just use it as long as functions are defined, you can just use. Maybe I was mixing up JavaScript. Maybe I was thinking of JavaScript. What about in JavaScript? In JavaScript, can you call a function which is defined later in the file? So it works if it's hoisted, and it does not work if it's not hoisted. I don't know what that means, and I don't want to figure it out right now. Fuck, I regret going down that rabbit hole. Don't like you, JavaScript. And you know what else? Google doesn't like you either. And ChatGPT doesn't like you either. So, okay. All right, so I'm gonna make a file. I'm just gonna make a file called like feed.php. Um, and it will work exactly the same. Honestly, I really probably should have done this already. I mean, there's already like a streaming layer that I can enable, but I don't want to mess with that, I guess. Okay, so we don't need a different API key. So get rid of there. And then everywhere where it mentions reg, I gotta change that to feedbot. Okay, so we're inserting the system prompt afterwards, so that's fine. Okay. So the question I have here is how do I change the array? Um, how do I change this array so that if I don't want to use a file store tool? That's pretty much the only thing that needs to be changed. Cool. So just remove it entirely. It's kind of what I was thinking, but would have been a pain in the ass to go figure that out and then check the error log, assuming it didn't work. Okay. All right. So now the one thing I need to do is make it so that run bot. And this is, I just realized that instead of making demos and sending sales emails and making sales calls, I have fully taken a total detour into coding. So that was maybe pretty foolish of me. I don't know. Run bot feed. Mm, reg.json, reg.php. Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna, just for the sake of laziness, I'm just not gonna add the escape clause, the ability to escape. So once you get into this, the only way out, I think, although I thought that before and I still was able to get out of it, but the only way is to start a new conversation, basically. Okay, right. So instead of including runbot feed, we're just going to include feed.php. All right, all right. I know. I broke it. I broke it, and now I've given myself like an 8-hour coding task, unless I'm going to abandon what I was just attempting to accomplish. And this is why I am going to die poor and alone. Anyways, let's see if it works. Content Explorer was the feed bot. Huh. Interesting. What just happened? Oh, what just happened? So there we go. It's feeding, it's like literally no benefit to having that be a structured output response. There was none. And honestly, even for the yeah, the company info bot. Wait. So this is what I was talking about. The I'm not sure that you can get out of the feedbot once you're in it. Looks like it did get out of the feedbot. Uh, I don't know how though. I don't know how that I mean, it should I think I have, like, an extra layer of API calls on that I don't even that I never wanted to have in there. Anyway, so there we go. So that's a streaming response. The feedbot is streaming, and the company info bot is also streaming. Um, in all honesty, what I could do wait, could I do that? Okay, well, what I was saying, and this is like it it applies to multiple things here, is that so for this bot, before the API call, it checks whether or not it should exit this chatbot. Uh, so what I was gonna say is that you could actually, and in order to figure out whether or not it exits the chatbot, that has to be a structured output response because because the response has to be like a yes or no, exit or don't exit. You know, um, so but you could get the streaming response and then figure out whether or not to exit, but that wouldn't necessarily make sense. It might though. Because then in the situations where their answer was "Don't exit," the user would have gotten the answer faster. But in the situations where the answer was "Exit," um, like, the user would just see a flash of the response for the wrong bot, and then that would disappear, and it would go to a different response from the right bot, and then be the final that would be what's actually committed to the chat history. Anyway, so the streaming feed bot is kinda sweet, and I'm pretty sure that in terms of this one, the interactive site explorer, it's called. Oh, that's what I was gonna say about the review bot. I mean, what it could do is like probably the streaming response could handle a significant chunk of it. And then you just once the conversation is almost finished, that's when you run it through the structured output. I don't know. Those are working pretty well though, so it's probably just don't mess with what's not broken. But anyways, so this one, um, how does that work actually? All right. So the browser bot, let's see whether or not we can make that one streaming. I just made all the feed bots streaming, like every single one, not just the one I was messing with, which is not a smart way to do things. Okay, Taiwan Web Designs browser. HTML the text. Let me see here. Does this have a type? Type. This doesn't even have a type. So let me think about this. The reason that the default as far I don't think there's any reason why the FAQ. Hmm. The trade-off between using a streaming response and using a structured output response is a difficult one. And you can get the best of both worlds, but only if you want to have two API calls. So the streaming is like, it's always like, I mean, when it's structured outputs, you can make structured output responses smarter, basically. They are smarter responses. They can be. If they're not, then you can make them so a lot easier than a streaming response because a streaming response really just has one. And all you could probably put like a chain of thought into any system prompt just by being like, step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this, step four, do this. Now, like go back and synthesize everything. You could probably do that. Uh, which means that if that works, then if it's a dumb answer, you can have it go back. You can change the system prompt to make it smarter. But anyways, but with structured outputs, that's kind of automatic. Like if it's giving you dumb responses, that's because you gave it a dumb response structure, and you can fix that. But with streaming responses, like it just has one system prompt. It doesn't have a schema to follow. So um, you can only put so much in that one system prompt before it starts to contradict itself or be confusing. Anyways, um, all right. I probably need to do this anyways. And honestly, I don't know. The fact that I haven't done this already was pure laziness. But, I mean, I just wanted to make sure it worked with the browser bot. I wanted to make sure the browser bot worked. That's all. And now that it works, we can think about things like how to make it not suck. Um, but first, it needs to not work. It needs to work at all before you can worry about it not sucking. So, anyways, I just gave it a type variable. And now what I'm going to do is say if the type equals browser, Then include run bot browser.php. Fine, whatever, dog. Run bot browser.php. So now, I'm going to take feed.php and I'm just going to use I think pretty much the exact same file. I think I can make pretty much the exact same file. Should I be in most difficult part? Whoops, and then I went to the wrong directory. And now that I finally am in the right directory, what the hell was I even doing? Okay, I think I'm making a file called runbot browser. And I called it rubbot, which I'm sure the bot will appreciate. Runbot browser.php, okay. I think that's all I need to do. And now instead of the default API call for the browser bot, we'll get a streaming API call. And as far as I know, we don't have to like actually even like refresh or restart anything. It should just work right off the bat. So this should be streaming, unless I fucked it up somehow. It might still take a while just because it's heh, interesting. Okay. So first of all, let's make sure I actually saved the changes to all those files. Run bot. Shit. All right. Looks like I did make all the changes necessary. Okay. I mean, all right, fine. Something might be cached. So let's start over. Hmm. Those are not streaming responses, right? I can't really even tell if these are streaming responses or not. I mean, I could check the streaming log and see if a lot of time. Usually, what the problem is in this case is that I misspelled browser or something along those lines. Type equals browser, and then in browser.php, browser equals browser. That's what I wrote. Browser equals browser. Instead of type equals browser, I wrote browser equals browser. Fucking idiot. All right, so now things might be streaming. There we go. We got streaming. I mean, I think that's better, right? I don't know why there's these giant spaces after every apostrophe. All right. So, I mean, I also could have just let the whatever, instead of creating a different streaming response for in a different file for each of these, just have one thing and just it's the default thing. I just need to uncomment out one line and then just set it so that it doesn't run this instead of, but unless there's like a specific circumstance, it does run. Um, but whatever. I mean, like for me, I just want to have a balance of like streaming responses and structured output responses. That's important to me because if I've just been making a whole bunch of streaming response things, then like the concept of putting together a structured output response starts to get too complicated. I can't think through how to do it. And so then I avoid doing it at all. And likewise with the streaming responses, if I'm just doing structured output responses, and then eventually I'm like, oh man, if I were to try to make this streaming, it'd be so complicated. So I just keep doing nothing but structured output responses. So this is like a good mix right now, I think. Let's see if we can get out of this browser now, though. I think I destroyed the ability to get out of it. Yeah. The only way to get out of it now is to start a new chat. That is pretty crazy how. So basically, what happens is when you start a new chat, it sends the message hi and starts to get a streaming response before it changes your session ID. So you see like the response and then it gets halfway done and then suddenly it disappears. That is kind of crazy. Okay, anyway, so now I just commented out the line type equals browser. So now this won't be streaming anymore. Um, yeah, so it is not streaming anymore. And now all I gotta do is uncomment that out. Wait, before I uncomment that out, I want to demonstrate something, which is that now we have no problem leaving the browser. We don't have to start a new, okay, well, we don't have to start a new chat to leave the browser right now because it has a a filter, like an escape filter, which is triggered when you say return to index. Okay, so now, oh, what did I do? Okay, so now I have uncommented the line, and now it's going to be streaming again, but we won't be able to get out of it. One thing that I could do is like make a system prompt with a streaming response where the only thing it does is like write a Google review based on the conversation history. And then make a system prompt with a streaming response where the only thing it does is write a blog post based on the conversation history. And then I'll change the structured output so that instead of being like, this is the section where you put the Google review, or this is the section where you put the blog. It's just should you write a Google review? Yes or no. Should you write a blog? Yes or no. And then if that answer is yes, it just triggers the system prompt that creates a streaming review or a streaming blog response. And that way there is not like a long pause. Like if I were to do the AI content creator right here, it's not a streaming response, it's a structured output response. And it seems to like always create a blog post regardless of whether it should or not, even when it shouldn't create a blog post because you haven't told it what to create a blog post about. It still insists on creating a blog post. See? It's like literally it says uh in the system prompt, it's like, do not create a blog post until the user has provided you with a topic. But the thing is, it thinks that the AI content creator, it thinks that this message is the topic. So it wrote a post about AI content creators, which I mean, I could remove that. I could make it, there's a lot of different ways I could make it so that it doesn't recognize this as like a user message. Or I could suppress this as a user message, whatever. But the point is, you see how long that took. before there was any response whatsoever. So if I were to do it that way where it's like, has the user provided a topic? Yes. Therefore, write a blog post. Then it just triggers the system prompt, which has a streaming response, which writes a blog post with a streaming response. And we're not really losing anything. In fact, it would then be like a lot easier to like specify very specifically which model is being used for the blog post, and we wouldn't have to use the same model to write the blog post as we do for the rest of the system prompt. In fact, it'd be good to separate those two out so that the system prompt that's for writing the blog post, that's like it just does that. It does one thing. And then the system prompt that like determines whether or not to write a blog post also does that. Like it just manages the structured output. It just like determines, are we ready to write a blog post or not? Have we gathered the sufficient information to write the blog post or not? That's all. But honestly, like creating like a chain of thought blog post creation is also there's just so many different ways to but that needs to be faster. But this, like, let's see here. So the content explorer, so this one's streaming now, right? Jesus. It still took a long time, but so we've got streaming responses for the browser, it's streaming responses for the feedbot, and we could create streaming responses for the blog poster, to be honest. I'll do that. I'm not gonna do that right now. No, 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 no. But also like the FAQ bot, there's really no reason. I'm sorry, I don't have that information. There's no real reason. What the hell is this? I don't even know what happened here. Uh, for this not to be. Alrighty, that did crash. Where were we? All right, I'm gonna make the FAQ bot stream. Considering that, um, considering that we've just done it twice for two different bots, and it was like a pretty simple process, I don't see any reason why not to do it again. So I'm just going to give it a type FAQ stream. Is that how you spell stream? Yep. Um, and then I'm just going to make a file called FAQ stream. And then I just need to change the one thing where it says FAQ stream instead of feedbot. And now I need to go to runbot. And now if is set type and type equals FEO stream. If is set type and type equals browser. So I need to change this to FAQ stream. And then we're going to include FAQ stream.php. And just like that, oops, I shouldn't even have to do anything. Like I can just keep asking it questions and the answer will start being a streaming answer instead of well, I don't know. That was a pretty weird FAQ stream. If type equals FAQ stream and type equals FAQ dash stream. Oh, I had not changed. I hadn't saved it. That's why. Name of company. Can you answer me that? There we go. It's streaming. Boom. And now can we escape it? No, we can't escape. Which I mean, that's really the trade. I mean, that's the first trade-off of the streaming is that like in order to add an escape and the ability to leave that bot, I have to make a structured output call. So that means we're doing two different API calls. Or I need to code in like an escape function into the streaming call, which I don't know how to do. So I don't want to go down that route. But it might actually be really easy. But the way, I mean, if it's literally just like the structured output call is just like, should I stick with this bot or not? That's the only thing. It's just like purely a binary, like yes or no. The total response is either yes or no. Then it's pretty fast, so you don't really even notice it. Like this one, so which one? The company infobot, so this it's doing this. It's doing two API calls instead of one. The first API call, it does one thing and one thing only. It just says, it just checks whether or not the question was returned to index. That said, if it's truly return to index, main menu return to index, if it's really a button push, then I could just bypass the entire API call and just do that with code. The only reason to have an API call is so that we can have it intelligently like so that if you're talking to it and you just start talking about something that is not really appropriate for this bot, that it can like intelligently just move you to a different bot. If I don't really care to have that functionality, then it doesn't really matter. And honestly, it's kind of like I think you could put that on the user where it's like, hey, you're talking to the wrong bot. Click main menu and move to a different bot. And also, it doesn't even work very well when so I don't know. But you see how, yeah, the main menu button worked for that, but it didn't work for the others. And that's purely because it has two API calls. But despite that, it's pretty fast. It doesn't take significantly longer. Oh, I think, you know what the thing is that um, I have it set up so that if you click on a button, it just totally bypasses the API call and moves you to a different bot. But that just doesn't happen with the main menu button. Oh, no, that didn't work. We're stuck inside of the interactive site explorer here. Yeah, we're stuck inside of that. But just as a demonstration, I think if I were to be on the company info bot and then I click on a different one, it will automatically switch to that one without having, yep, that did work. Um, so I just have to figure something out real quick, but first I'm gonna have to do something else.